All right, let's go ahead and move on. We're going to talk about this vaccine mandate court decision, a very big ruling out of the state of New Orleans in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. So let's put this up there on the screen, which is that the judges in the Fifth Circuit have frozen the Biden vaccine or testing requirement after a federal lawsuit. So the Court of Appeals suspended the requirement for private companies. Now, this is important because it was issued by a panel of 3 judges. Now, all the judges were GOP appointed. However, within that, what they rule is not necessarily a total strike against the mandate itself, but they are giving the Biden administration a few days in order to come forward and respond to what they say could be a grave assault on liberty and grave statutory and constitutional issues with the mandate itself. So essentially what needs to happen now is that the Biden administration has until 5 p.m. Monday today to go ahead and respond to the request for a more permanent halt to the mandate itself. Now, in terms of the court watchers that I have asked around, they do think that it's possible that this may get stayed until there is a Supreme Court decision itself on the matter. So what that would mean, and this you guys can think back to the DACA decision where we saw like a Hawaii or a California judge pause it all the way up into the hill, hit the Supreme Court. There were others under the Trump administration as well. The travel ban was another one where until the Supreme Court ruled on it, it didn't actually go into effect. This could kick it into the same territory. And of course, we know that the Supreme Court can take a very long time. Now, what's happening here is that the Department of Labor, who issued that ruling through the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, is arguing that under the OSHA Act itself, that it already gives the government the authority, quote, to act quickly in an emergency where the agency finds that workers are subjected to a grave danger and a new standard is necessary to protect them. Now, under that standard, they're arguing that COVID go ahead and applies to this. The real question is around where SCOTUS would fall, Krystal, because people in SCOTUS have kind of been, when I say SCOTUS, sorry for those who aren't insiders, Supreme Court of the United States, where the Supreme Court is going to stand on this is they have been all over the map. So we'll remember Justice Kavanaugh, the Trump-appointed judge, had already acquiesced on the eviction moratorium back in the several months ago, whenever he said that because coronavirus is this extraordinary crisis, we are allowing the eviction mandate to go forward, even though, in my judgment, it's probably not legal. Now, that actually could give an opening as to why they may justify then, and seeing coronavirus as an extraordinary crisis, grave danger, all of that, possible avenues through. Justices Gorsuch and Barrett, a little bit more libertarian in their leanings, very difficult to see them going ahead. So you could see a 5-4 split right there, even though it is a 6-3 court. Justice Roberts, again, whenever it came to the Trump administration, he would always object based on process arguments. So it's like, oh, well, you didn't file the right paperwork, so that's not the right thing. Biden administration has at least gone through all of the administrative loopholes. Big question as to how they decide there. And then the main one is this. Remember, the Supreme Court did not find that the main vaccine mandate, which recently came to them, violated constitutional rights, but that was based on religious exemptions themselves. So this would be as a mandate for all workers and critically in private companies. So the vaccine requirements plus the testing requirement, whether it infringes upon the constitutional rights of both businesses and the individuals who work there who don't work for federal contractors. That's really why the case law here is very different. But there's a lot of questions right now as to how the Supreme Court's going to find this, Krystal.
So there are. Overall, courts have been, both Republican and Democratic appointed judges have been ruling in favor of a variety of mandates. Yeah. Both those implemented by universities, for example, also those like the one in Maine, have been upheld. Wall Street Journal said in at least 17 different lawsuits, judges have refused to block those vaccine mandates. They upheld Maine, they upheld universities, they've upheld some that have come from corporations. That all mostly dates back to this 1905 U.S. Supreme Court decision, Jacobson versus Massachusetts. There was a Lutheran pastor who had an objection to the smallpox vaccination requirement. Yeah. And that was actually even more stringent because at that point, there wasn't an option of vaccine or test, number one. Number two, they actually would fine you if you didn't go forward and get the smallpox vaccine. This particular gentleman had a rare but very damaging reaction to a vaccination he had received previously. So he had, a major health consequence. It was a more onerous burden in terms of, it was a stricter vaccine mandate, and the court upheld it. Let me just read you a little bit of the decision because I think it's interesting the way that they worded it. It was written by Justice John Marshall Harlan. The court held that, quote, in every well-ordered society charged with the duty of conserving the safety of its members, the rights of the individual in respect of his liberty may at times, under the pressure of great dangers, be subjected to such restraint to be enforced by reasonable regulations as the safety of the general public may demand. So that is the case law that this goes back to, that 1905 ruling that gives the state a lot of power in terms of these types of vaccine mandates. So that's why a lot of people have felt that when this does ultimately go up to the Supreme Court, it is very likely to stand.
Yeah, and the other question, because I raised that as well, was that there are gonna be a lot of arguments over whether coronavirus now faces a grave danger standard. So that's gonna be, you're gonna hear a lot of stuff like what we heard in the public square actually presented within the courts around survival rates, around when you have vaccination, herd immunity, death, all of that as compared to smallpox. It's going to be pretty fascinating because it's basically going to be a distillation of the public argument, but in a legal framework, which then can apply to everybody. So, it's interesting too, in order to think about it in the public context, we have to remember the Supreme Court is a political machine just like any other. I mean, the Justice Roberts is desperate to avoid court packing, and he doesn't want to fall on the wrong side of public opinion. And public opinion is shifting around on this. The vaccine mandate was actually quite popular whenever it was implemented or announced at the time a couple of months ago. It was in the 80-20 level of support. But as I pointed out in a recent monologue, let's put this tweet up there on the screen. This is from NBC News' own polling. They find 47% favor the mandate, while 50% actually oppose. And the strong agreement or disagreement there is a 34 strongly favor with a 41% strongly disapprove.
This question, though, does ask, do you support everyone getting a COVID-19 vaccine?
Right.
It doesn't give the vaccine or test alternative, and it doesn't have the language in there about just businesses with 100 people or more.
That's right. And I believe also that the 100 or more requirement, this is another thing that OSHA is looking at in order to try and push it even further down the chain in terms of the number of people who are employed or not, but they haven't yet found, the same legal ground. The 100 or more seems to be the standard that they feel the most comfortable on. And you actually found this one where the vaccine mandate collides with business interests. So let's put this on the screen from Politico, which is that the mandate from Biden is very specifically tailored in order to hit on January 4. Now, you may think that's because of the new year, but actually it's because the people who are involved in the holiday shopping season are like, okay, hold on a second. You cannot make us enforce this thing whenever we have to send out all of these Christmas gifts and more, even though we're already in the middle of a supply chain crisis. And so I do find this a little, ridiculous in that, look, if it's a total pressing danger crisis that the Biden administration says it is, then the holiday season shopping market probably shouldn't be the consideration. So instead, they're actually shifting it to January 4 in order to make sure Amazon and Walmart and all these other people can send out their gifts on time. It just goes to show that even in this one, the business lobby was very, very effective at saying, well, hold on a second. We got to wait until that part where we end up firing like 500,000 people who are seasonal workers before we actually kick this thing into effect. Yeah.
Governments have competing priorities. One of those priorities,
Certainly.
Making sure Santa is going to arrive on time.
That's right.
Okay, that's
God
fine.
God forbid
to weigh
Amazon
that.
takes a little bit longer.
That's fine to weigh that against, health and safety of the American people. There is one other piece here, which is just kind of funny. For those of you, look, I think personally, as I've said before, that the alternative of you can either get vaccinated or you can get tested, to me, strikes the right balance between individual liberty and caring for the community, making sure that people are ultimately safe when they're at work. However, for those of you who do not hold that position and you are completely opposed to it, let me offer one potential reason to maybe get behind it. Let's throw this last tear sheet up on the screen. Apparently, thousands of CIA ghouls might get fired because they're not getting vaccinated. And I think that personally, I view that as a win all the way around.
This is the one thing that could make me flip on the issue, Krystal, which is that there's a lot of people apparently in the intel community who don't want to. And, I got to strike the balance between everybody has rights and, I probably shouldn't judge people, and make sure everybody's taken advantage of. But then also, taken care of. And then there's the intel people. I'm like, well, God, I just don't know who decides. So we thought that's a funny little addendum for those who hate the deep state. It could be that the vax mandate is the most effective thing in order to clean the deep state out in a very long time. Although maybe these are the people who were sympathetic to the deep state argument in the first place, and they would be getting out, and it would turn you into more of a neoliberal shill place. So who knows? Maybe it's even worse of a situation.
Complicated.
But a funny
I'm just wondering when they're going to come up with a vaccine for Havana syndrome.
Well,
that
if these people had their way, that they certainly would be plowing hundreds of billions of dollars toward that goal.
Well, they already passed the money
that's
through Congress.
For relief. Now they need research. They need even more. They need benefits. So
yeah. Let's we'll get right on top of that. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut. Our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions. All that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.